I never thought I would be the guy sharing my heartbreak on a platform like this. But here I am, and you'll soon understand why. Let me give you a little background. My name is Mark, and I've been married to Jess for 8 years. We met in college during a biology seminar on immunotherapy. Funny, right? We were both passionate about our research, and it felt like we were destined to be partners both in life and in our medical pursuits. Jess is brilliant, ambitious, and at least I thought devoted. That is until everything unraveled. For the past year, I noticed some strange behavior from Jess. It started small, a missed call here and there, late nights at the lab that turned into team meetings. I brushed it off at first. After all, we were on the verge of a breakthrough in our cancer research, and both of us were working long hours. She would come home, raving about the latest findings, and I'd feel proud of her enthusiasm. But deep down, I felt a nagging sense of something amiss. Then came the text messages. I remember one night vividly. Jess was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on. The kitchen counter. I glanced at the screen. It was a message from a guy named Matt, a colleague I vaguely remembered from a conference. The text read, "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe." My heart sank. I convinced myself it was innocent, maybe just a playful banter, but the uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. Things escalated when I found Jess's perfume on a shirt that wasn't mine. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it was hard to ignore. I know this might sound cliché, but I felt like I was in a bad movie. Everything I once cherished about our relationship seemed to flicker like a faulty light bulb. I started keeping tabs on her schedule. It became an obsession. One night I decided to follow her after work. I parked a few blocks away from the lab and waited. My heart raced as I watched her walk to a nearby bar. I couldn't believe it. I parked, cautiously approached the entrance, and peered inside. There she was, laughing, flirting, and sharing a table with Matt. It felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest as I watched them lean in closer. I wanted to scream, to break the glass and confront them right then and there, but something stopped me. Rage and heartbreak warred within me, and I knew I needed to gather more evidence before I made any rash decisions. After leaving the bar, I spent the night tossing and turning, replaying everything in my mind. How could she betray me like this? I kept asking myself. Jess had always acted like the perfect wife, supportive and loving. But now I saw her for who she really was, a woman who could lie and sneak around when the chips were down. It was gut-wrenching, and I felt an overwhelming mix of betrayal and anger. The next few days passed with a strange tension in our home. I avoided her as best I could while mentally preparing for the inevitable confrontation. I needed to know for sure, but deep down, I was terrified of what the truth would bring. It was a heavy burden to carry, the weight of secrets, lies, and my crumbling faith in our marriage. I finally gathered the courage to confront Jess. We were both home one evening, and I could sense the tension in the air. As she prepared dinner, I decided to bring up the topic that had been haunting me. "Jess, we need to talk about something important." Her response was immediate, almost dismissive. "Can it wait? I'm really busy." But I couldn't hold back. I needed answers. "No, it can't wait. I saw you with Matt." She froze, her eyes widening before narrowing into a defensive glare. "What are you talking about? You're being ridiculous." "Ridiculous? I watched you, Jess. I saw you laughing and flirting with him." I could see the gears turning in her head as she searched for a lie strong enough to cover her betrayal. "It was just a work thing. You don't understand." But I did understand. I knew what I saw, and I was done with her excuses. That was the turning point, the moment I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. As we argued, I felt a storm brewing inside me. Jess's reaction was infuriatingly calm, as if she believed her lies could protect her. I wanted to unleash my fury, to expose her deceit for what it was, but I held back. I would save that for a more calculated moment, one that would leave her reeling. With my heart in turmoil, I realized I needed to take control, not just of this situation, but of my life. I wouldn't let her betrayal define my future. Little did Jess know I was already formulating a plan for revenge, one that would hit her right where it hurt the most. As the night wore on, I felt a mix of anger and determination. No more passive acceptance of her lies. I had the power to make her feel the weight of her actions, and I intended to use it. When the dust finally settled, I would emerge stronger, wiser, and ready to reclaim my life. The game was on. After that explosive confrontation, I found myself in a haze of emotions. I was angry, hurt, and utterly betrayed, but a strange clarity began to form. I was done with Jess's lies. I needed to take action to regain some semblance of control over my life and my future. Revenge wasn't just a petty thought, it became a burning motivation. I spent nights formulating my plan. First, I needed proof, not just for my own peace of mind, but also to ensure Jess couldn't spin her web of lies any further. I started tracking her movements more diligently. It felt wrong, invasive even, but I justified it as a necessary step to hold her accountable for her actions. I needed to know who else was involved and how deep the betrayal ran. The next few weeks were torturous. Jess continued to act as if everything was fine, throwing out casual conversations about work and our supposed plans for the weekend. I played along, wearing a mask of indifference while my heart simmered beneath. It was exhausting pretending, but I was committed to my course of action. One Saturday, I decided to follow her again. This time, it wasn't just about Matt. I wanted to see if there were other work meetings or late nights that I hadn't previously uncovered. I parked outside the same bar, a nondescript little place that was becoming all too familiar. I waited with a sense of determination that I hadn't felt before, ready to collect any evidence I could find. I didn't have to wait long. Jess arrived with a different colleague this time, a woman named Sarah, who I recognized from some of our lab meetings. They seemed to be in high spirits, laughing and sharing drinks. I felt a surge of anger when I saw Jess lean in close to Sarah, whispering something that made them both laugh. I pulled out my phone, snapping photos of them together, my heart racing with each click of the camera. I knew I was crossing a line, but the thrill of gathering this evidence ignited something within me. I felt like a detective on a mission, uncovering the truth behind the facade. I continued to observe, and as the night progressed, I witnessed Jess get increasingly affectionate with Sarah. They shared intimate glances and leaning touches, and I felt a fresh wave of betrayal wash over me. It was worse than I had initially thought. Jess wasn't just cheating with Matt. She was exploring her options, apparently unbothered by the vows we had taken. After what felt like hours, I finally decided to leave, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge. I had amassed enough evidence to confront her again, but this time it would be different. I wouldn't just accuse her. I would lay it all out in front of her, forcing her to face the reality of her actions. That night, I couldn't sleep. I spent hours poring over the photos I had taken, strategizing my next move. I felt like a man on a mission, fueled by righteous anger and a desire for justice. Jess had taken my heart and trampled on it, and I was determined to make her feel the consequences of her betrayal. The next day, I decided to put my plan into action. I invited Jess to meet me at the lab under the pretense of discussing our research. When she arrived, I could see the confusion in her eyes, but I maintained my composure. I led her to one of the conference rooms, ensuring we had privacy. "Jess, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady as I locked the door behind us. She looked at me, her expression shifting from confusion to concern. "Is something wrong?" I took a deep breath, grounding myself. "You know exactly what's wrong. I have proof of your cheating, not just with Matt, but also with Sarah." I pulled out my phone, quickly scrolling through the images I had taken. I could see her face pale as I showed her the evidence, each picture a dagger that pierced through the illusion she had created. Her facade shattered instantly. "Mark, please, you don't understand. It's not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice rising in panic. "It's exactly what it looks like, Jess. You've been lying to me and betraying my trust. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me." My voice trembled with emotion, but I held firm. "Mark, I was just confused. There was so much pressure at work, and I didn't mean for it to happen." She tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. "Confused? You chose to sneak around instead of talking to me. You could have come to me, but you didn't. You decided to throw away our marriage for a fling. I can't believe I ever thought you were the one I could trust." Her eyes filled with tears, but there was a steely resolve in my heart. I wouldn't allow her to manipulate me with false remorse. You need to understand the gravity of what you did, Jess. I can't just forgive this. I'm done with the lies and the deceit. I watched as she struggled for words, her composure faltering. A part of me felt a pang of sympathy, but the overwhelming sense of betrayal drowned it out. I needed her to feel the weight of her decisions. Mark, please, let's work this out. She pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice, but I had already made my decision. I don't think there's anything left to work out. You've destroyed the foundation of our marriage, and I can't rebuild on that. I walked out of the conference room, leaving Jess behind, her cries echoing in the air. The moment felt surreal, almost like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I had taken the first step towards reclaiming my life, and there was no turning back now. As I drove home that night, I felt a strange mix of liberation and sorrow. I had lost the woman I thought I knew, and yet I was finally free from the chains of her betrayal. I was ready to move forward, no matter what that meant for the future. The journey ahead would be painful, but it was ultimately mine, and I would rise from the ashes stronger than before. The days that followed the confrontation were a whirlwind of emotions, each day feeling heavier than the last. I was still processing the fallout from my confrontation with Jess. The initial rush of empowerment was quickly waning, replaced by a profound sense of loss. I had lost not just a wife, but a partner, a confidant, and the dreams we had built together. Jess moved out the day after our confrontation. She took only a few essentials, leaving behind memories that echoed in every corner of our home. I'd expected her to fight harder to plead her case, but the defeat in her eyes told me she knew she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. As I packed up her things, I felt an odd mixture of relief and heartbreak. I had won the battle, but the war within me was just beginning. The first week alone was the toughest. I found myself staring at the wall, reminiscing about the good times, the laughter, and even the quiet moments we had shared. I missed the intimacy we had, the late-night talks, and the shared dreams of our research. But then, like clockwork, memories of betrayal crept in, reminding me why I couldn't go back. It was a tug-of-war within my heart, and I was losing grip. I decided to throw myself into my work, hoping it would distract me from the pain. I spent long hours at the lab, diving into our research project. It was an ambitious immunotherapy study that had the potential to change cancer treatment forever. I'd always envisioned Jess and me celebrating our success together, but now the motivation felt hollow without her by my side. One evening, as I worked late into the night, I stumbled upon some new data that could be a breakthrough. My heart raced with excitement. This was the moment I had been waiting for, a chance to make a real impact. I was at the precipice of something monumental, and I felt a rush of exhilaration that pushed the sadness aside, at least for a moment. But then I thought about Jess. She had always been my partner in these moments, my sounding board for new ideas. I couldn't deny that the memories of her enthusiasm and support still haunted me. I picked up my phone to call her but stopped myself, realizing that doing so would only plunge me back into the confusion and hurt. Instead, I decided to reach out to my mentor, Dr. Harris, who had been a guiding light throughout my career. "Hey, Mark. Good to hear from you," he said when I called. "Thanks, Dr. Harris. I've made some progress on the immunotherapy project and could really use your perspective," I confessed, feeling a sense of relief at having someone to talk to. We discussed the findings in depth, and as we spoke, I felt a sense of purpose returning. Dr. Harris was impressed with my work and offered to help me refine the research for publication. It felt good to have a direction again, to focus on something meaningful outside of my personal turmoil. But as the days turned into weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jess was still lurking in the background of my life. I would see her name pop up on social media, often accompanied by pictures of her with Matt and others from the lab. It felt like she was flaunting her new life, and each image felt like a dagger in my heart. I wanted to erase her from my life completely, but it wasn't easy. Our mutual friends often wanted to catch up with both of us, and I couldn't help but feel the tension when her name came up in conversation. They would tell me how much fun she was having and how she seemed happier. I couldn't help but feel a mix of anger and sadness, as if they were trying to justify her choices. One night, I decided to go out with a few colleagues to blow off steam. I met them at a bar downtown, trying to enjoy myself and forget about my troubles. As I sipped my drink, I caught a glimpse of Jess across the room. She was laughing, chatting animatedly with a group of friends, and it felt like a punch to my gut. Suddenly, my emotions exploded. I felt rage and sadness wash over me like a tidal wave. I stormed out of the bar, needing air, feeling lost and overwhelmed. I wandered the streets, grappling with the intensity of my feelings. "Why did you do this to us, Jess?" I muttered to myself, my voice barely above a whisper. I was angry, not just at her but at myself for allowing this to happen. I felt like I was trapped in a cycle of pain, unable to move forward. As I paced, my thoughts turned to revenge. I wanted to make her feel the weight of her decisions, to show her that she'd made a grave mistake. But how? I didn't want to stoop to her level, engaging in petty games, but the thought lingered nonetheless. The next day, I decided to channel that anger into work. I focused on the research, pouring every ounce of my frustration into it. Finding solace in the lab, I worked tirelessly, and soon enough I began to see real results. My findings were groundbreaking, and with Dr. Harris's guidance, I prepped a paper for publication. It felt good to be productive, to achieve something significant despite the chaos in my personal life. But beneath the surface, the emotional turmoil continued to churn. I was still grappling with feelings of betrayal and hurt. I missed Jess, but I also knew I couldn't go back to the person she was. It was a painful realization, one that I had to face head-on. Then one evening I received a phone call from Dr. Harris. "Mark, I've been thinking about your research, and I believe we should present it at the upcoming cancer symposium. This is a chance to showcase your work to some of the biggest names in the field." My heart raced. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I felt a renewed sense of purpose, and for the first time in weeks I felt a glimmer of hope. I told Dr. Harris I was in, and we began preparing for the presentation. This was my chance to rise above the ashes of my broken marriage and show Jess and myself that I could not only survive but thrive. As we finalized our plans, I felt a sense of optimism begin to bloom. I was determined to move forward, to rebuild my life without Jess. But no matter how hard I tried, I knew the emotional scars would take time to heal. I would need to confront my feelings and come to terms with the reality of what had happened. Every day was a step towards acceptance, and I vowed to channel my pain into something productive. I had a goal now, something to strive for, and I wouldn't let anyone or anything distract me from achieving it. As I stood in the lab surrounded by my research, I felt a sense of strength returning. I was ready to face whatever came next, one step at a time. Preparing for the upcoming cancer symposium became my sole focus. I poured every ounce of energy into my research, driven by the desire to present groundbreaking findings that could redefine treatment for patients battling cancer. The days leading up to the event were filled with excitement and anxiety. I was harnessing the pain from my personal life and channeling it into something profound. As the day of the symposium approached, I found myself caught up in a whirlwind of preparations. Dr. Harris and I practiced my presentation repeatedly. He was an experienced speaker, and his insights helped me refine my points while easing my nerves. I was grateful for his mentorship, which felt even more significant given the upheaval in my personal life. The night before the symposium, I stayed up late, finalizing my slides and rehearsing my speech. I felt nervous adrenaline coursing through me, but it was a good kind of nervousness. This was my moment to shine, and I was determined to make an impact. I thought about Jess and how she had once stood beside me in moments like these. A pang of sadness hit me, but I quickly pushed it aside. I couldn't afford to let the past overshadow my future. The day of the symposium arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. The venue was filled with brilliant minds and influential figures in the medical community. As I stepped onto the stage, my heart raced. I glanced at the audience, recognizing several familiar faces, including some colleagues from my lab and even Matt, Jess's current interest. I took a deep breath and began my presentation. With each slide I revealed, I became more confident. I spoke passionately about our research on immunotherapy, detailing how our approach differed from current treatments. I could see the audience engaged, nodding along as I shared our findings and the potential implications for cancer patients. It felt empowering to be in control of my narrative, to showcase my hard work after everything that had happened. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. I felt a rush of relief and accomplishment wash over me. I had shared my work with the world, and I could feel the weight of the past slowly lifting. As I stepped off the stage, several colleagues approached me to congratulate me on my presentation. I felt buoyed by their support, my heart swelling with pride at what I had achieved. But as the evening wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling of Jess lingering in the back of my mind. I spotted her across the room, chatting animatedly with friends, her laughter ringing out like a siren's call. Part of me wanted to confront her, to ask her how she could move on so easily, but I knew that would only lead to more pain. Instead, I decided to avoid her and focus on celebrating my success with others. As the night progressed, I received praise from several prominent figures in the medical field. Dr. Harris beamed with pride, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time in weeks, I was genuinely happy. I had turned my pain into something positive, and it felt liberating. Later, as I chatted with some colleagues, I noticed Jess making her way toward me. My heart raced. I braced myself for an encounter, unsure of what I would say. She approached with a hesitant smile, and I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "Mark, you did an amazing job tonight. I'm really proud of you," she said, her voice lacking the usual confidence. "Thanks, Jess," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I wasn't ready to dive into a conversation about us, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate the situation. Are you okay?" she asked, concern creeping into her tone. I wanted to snap back, to tell her that she had no right to ask me that after everything, but I held my tongue. "I'm doing fine, Jess. I'm focusing on my work." Her expression faltered, and I could see the realization settling in that I wasn't the same man she had once known. "I just wanted to check on you. I've missed you." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. I took a step back, reminding myself of the betrayal and the hurt. "You made your choices, Jess. I'm moving forward." She looked taken aback, her eyes welling with tears. "Mark, please, it was a mistake. I never meant for it to hurt you like this." "Yet here we are," I said, my voice steady but cold. "I can't go back. I've worked too hard to rebuild my life." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving Jess standing there. The encounter was bittersweet, a reminder of what we had lost and the distance that had grown between us. Yet it also reinforced my resolve. I was no longer the man who would tolerate betrayal. I had taken control of my life, and there was no going back. The following weeks were a blur. My research gained traction, and I received invitations to present at other conferences. I felt myself coming into my own, my confidence growing as I stepped further into my professional identity. I was no longer just Mark, the husband. I was Mark, the researcher, and I was proud of the work I was doing. But there were still moments of vulnerability. I would sometimes dream of Jess, and when I woke, it felt like I was losing her all over again. I often reminded myself that I couldn't dwell on the past, that the future was where my focus needed to lie. As I continued to push forward, I began to explore life outside of the lab. I joined a local running club, something I had always wanted to do but never found the time for. It felt exhilarating to be part of something new, to meet different people, and to feel my body move in ways that reminded me I was alive. One day, during a run, I struck up a conversation with another runner named Emily. She was bright and engaging, and we quickly struck a rapport. We exchanged numbers, and soon after, I found myself texting her and making plans to grab coffee. It was strange, but I felt a spark of excitement, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. When we met, the conversation flowed easily. Emily was passionate about fitness and health, and we bonded over shared interests. It felt refreshing to be with someone who didn't carry the baggage of my past. As we laughed and talked, I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps I could open my heart again, one small step at a time. But just as I was beginning to feel optimistic about my future, Jess reached out again. She sent me a message asking if we could meet. I didn't want to, but part of me felt the need to. Confront the past one last time. I had come so far, and maybe it was time to finally close the chapter on our relationship for good. I agreed to meet her, my heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and resolve. I knew this could be another emotional roller coaster, but I was prepared to stand my ground. I wasn't the same man who had been devastated by her betrayal. I was stronger, and I would not let her manipulation pull me back into the darkness. As I approached the cafe where we agreed to meet, I felt a surge of determination. I was ready to face whatever she had to say, but I also knew that I was moving forward, no matter what. I was ready to take that final step toward closure, to reclaim my life fully and completely. As I walked into the cafe, I could feel the tension bubbling beneath the surface. The familiar scent of coffee mixed with the soft chatter of patrons created an atmosphere that felt oddly comforting, yet anxiety pulsed through me. I spotted Jess sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a cup, staring out the window as if lost. In thought, taking a deep breath, I approached her and sat down, my heart racing. Jess turned her gaze toward me, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of the woman I once loved. But it quickly faded, replaced by the tension that had defined our relationship since the betrayal. "Thanks for meeting me," she said softly, her voice almost fragile. "Let's get to it, Jess," I replied, firm and direct. I didn't want to dwell on pleasantries. We both knew why we were here. She nodded, biting her lip in a way that reminded me of the old Jess, the one who would nervously chew on her lip when she was about to approach a difficult topic. "I wanted to apologize," she began, her voice shaky. "What I did was unforgivable, and I've regretted it every single day." I wasn't going to let her sweet words sway me. "Apologies don't change what happened, Jess. You made your choices." I know, but I've been doing a lot of thinking. After you left, I realized how much I took for granted. I lost a good man, someone who cared deeply for me." Her eyes filled with tears, and I felt an overwhelming urge to remain stoic. I had been down this road before, and I wouldn't let her play on my sympathy. "I've been trying to figure out how to make this right," she continued. "I know I can't just erase what happened, but I want to be honest with you. Matt and I, it was a mistake. It was never about love. It was an escape from my own insecurities, and I just ran with it. I'm so sorry." I listened, my emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to hear her out, to understand her perspective, but another part of me felt the anger bubbling back to the surface. "Jess," I said, taking a deep breath, "you can't just say you're sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. You shattered our trust. You made a choice, and that choice was to betray the person who loved you the most." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know. I don't expect you to forgive me right now, and I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I'm working on myself. I'm in therapy, trying to figure out why I acted the way I did." I wanted to scream at her that it wasn't enough, that no amount of therapy could fix what she had done, but I held my tongue. "What do you want from me, Jess?" "Just a chance to explain," she said, her voice trembling. "To let you know that I'm not that person anymore. I want to make amends in whatever way I can." "Making amends doesn't mean we can go back to being friends or picking up where we left off," I replied, my voice steady but firm. "There's too much hurt between us. You can't expect me to just forgive and forget." "I don't expect you to forget," she said, her tone earnest. "I just hope you can see that I'm not the same woman who hurt you. I'm trying to change, and I want to take responsibility for my actions." The conversation hung heavy in the air, a bittersweet reminder of what once was. I could see her sincerity, but the pain of her betrayal still felt fresh and raw. "Jess, I'm glad you're working on yourself, but I can't bear the thought of going back to the way things were. I need to move on." She wiped her tears, her expression shifting to one of desperation. "Mark, please don't shut me out completely. I care about you, and I always will. You meant everything to me, and losing you has been the hardest thing I've ever had to face." "Then you should have thought about that before you cheated," I retorted, my anger flaring. "You can't just flip a switch and expect to turn back time. You made a choice, and now we both have to deal with the consequences." Silence enveloped us, and I could see her struggling to find the right words. I could have walked away, but something held me there, a mix of curiosity and lingering affection. "What are you hoping to achieve by meeting me today?" I asked, softening just a little. I just wanted to explain myself. I wanted you to know that I'm working hard to understand my mistakes. And I want you to know that I'm genuinely sorry, she replied, her voice steadying as she wiped away her tears. I studied her, feeling the weight of our shared history pressing down on me. And what if I can't forgive you? What if I never trust you again? Then I'll accept that, she said, her voice filled with conviction. But I want you to know that I'll always be here if you need me. I want you to be happy even if it's not with me. Her words struck a chord. It was a stark contrast to the Jess I had known, who would have fought tooth and nail for my affection. This Jess was different. She was humbled, raw, and perhaps finally ready to take accountability for her actions. Yet, even with her newfound perspective, I realized that the damage had been done. I couldn't just brush aside the betrayal. I need space, Jess. I need to heal, and right now, seeing you is like picking at a wound that hasn't fully healed. I understand, she replied, her voice barely a whisper. I'll give you space, but please remember that I'm truly sorry for everything. I hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I nodded slowly. Take care of yourself. Jess, as I stood up to leave, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. The encounter had been cathartic, but it also reinforced my resolve to move forward. I knew it wouldn't be easy, healing takes time, but I was committed to reclaiming my life, one step at a time. As I left the cafe, I felt lighter, as if I had taken a weight off my shoulders. The past was still a part of me, but it wouldn't define my future. I was determined to forge my own path and build a life that was worth living, one filled with passion and purpose. In the weeks that followed, I focused on my work, my newfound friendships, and my own healing. I spent time with Emily, our connection deepening as we explored new interests together. I found joy in the little things: a morning run, dinner at a new restaurant, or simply enjoying a quiet evening with a book. I knew I still had a long road ahead, but I was finally beginning to feel like myself again. I was ready to embrace what life had to offer, and I was committed to moving forward without letting the past hold me. With each passing day, I felt the pain of betrayal fade, replaced by the promise of new beginnings. I was free, and I was ready to embrace my future. As the weeks turned into months, I continued to build my new life brick by brick. The healing process was gradual, but I was learning to find strength in independence. My work in the lab flourished, and I was recognized for my contributions to the field of immunotherapy. I received offers to collaborate with other researchers, and I felt invigorated by the opportunities that lay ahead. My relationship with Emily blossomed as well. She was refreshing, filled with laughter and enthusiasm for life. Each time we met, I felt lighter. Her energy was contagious, and she encouraged me to embrace new experiences without the weight of my past. I introduced her to my love for running, and we often took long jogs around the park, sharing stories and dreams. With Emily, I felt a sense of normalcy returning to my life, something I hadn't experienced since Jess's betrayal. However, there were still moments when the past would creep in uninvited. I'd hear a familiar song on the radio or come across a picture of Jess in our old home. Those moments would bring a pang of nostalgia, but I learned to acknowledge them without letting them drag me back into despair. I reminded myself that healing wasn't linear. It was a series of ups and downs, and I was learning to ride those waves. Then, one evening, I received a phone call from Dr. Harris. "Mark, I wanted to let you know I've submitted your research for a major grant. It's a big deal, and I believe you're going to make a significant impact in our field." My heart soared. "Thank you, Dr. Harris. That means so much to me. I appreciate your guidance." As we spoke about the future of our research and the potential it had for changing lives, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was on the brink of something that could truly help others, and that was more fulfilling than any previous relationship had ever been. In the midst of all this, I got news that Jess had reached out to Dr. Harris, asking about me. He didn't disclose much, but I could tell that she was interested in my progress. Part of me felt a twinge of anger. How could she still have the nerve to keep tabs on me after everything? But I also realized that it didn't matter. My life was on a different trajectory now, and I was no longer the man who would let her dictate my happiness. As summer rolled in, Emily and I planned a small getaway to the coast. It felt incredible to step away from the routine, to breathe in the salt air and enjoy the beauty of the ocean. We spent our days exploring quaint shops and enjoying long walks on the beach, and I found myself laughing easily, something I hadn't done in a long time. One night, as we strolled along the shoreline, the moonlight dancing on the water, I turned to Emily. "You know, I've really enjoyed our time together. You've helped me heal in ways I didn't think were possible." She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "I'm glad to hear that, Mark. You deserve happiness, and I want to support you in whatever way I can." In that moment, I made a decision. I was ready to fully embrace this new chapter in my life. I leaned in and kissed her, and it felt right. It was a soft, gentle kiss that spoke of possibilities, of moving forward without the shadows of the past overshadowing us. When we returned from our trip, life continued to unfold beautifully. I focused on my research, submitting my work for publication and preparing for upcoming conferences. Emily was a constant source of support, cheering me on as I advanced in my career. Then, one sunny afternoon, I received a phone call that would change everything. The grant Dr. Harris had submitted on my behalf was approved. I could hardly believe it. I was elated, overwhelmed by the realization that my hard work was finally paying off. The moment I hung up, I felt a surge of emotion. I had built this life for myself, one that honored my commitment to my work and my newfound independence. I was no longer defined by my past or by Jess's betrayal. I was Mark, a researcher, a runner, and a man ready to embrace whatever came next. As I processed the news, I thought about Jess. It was time to close that chapter for good. I had given her the chance to explain herself, but now it was time to let go completely. I grabbed my phone and decided to send her a message. "Jess, I wanted to let you know that I'm moving forward with my life. I've accepted that we can't go back to how things were. I hope you find the happiness you seek, but I need to focus on my own path now. Take care." I hit send, and a wave of relief washed over me. I was finally ready to let go of the past once and for all. Days later, I met Emily for coffee at our favorite cafe. As we chatted and laughed, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. I had emerged from the ashes of heartbreak, stronger and more resilient than I could have imagined. Life was unfolding before me, filled with promise and new beginnings. I had learned the hard way that betrayal could shatter trust, but it could also pave the way for growth, self-discovery, and ultimately happiness. With each passing day, I embraced my journey, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I had learned to rise from the ruins, to find strength in vulnerability, and most importantly, to love myself. And as I sat with Emily, enjoying the warmth of the sun and the comfort of companionship, I knew that I was finally on the right path.